Okay, guys. All right, got it. Thank you. Thumbs up. Uh, Thank you guys for being here. If you guys don't know me, I'm Dennis Brooks with Hamagari USA. My wife Tanya, Hamagari USA Sharp Edges as well, and my daughter Lainey, very instrumental in what we do. And we're just glad you're here. Our motto with Hamagari USA and with Sharp Edges is, as we always believe, stronger together. We believe in that, and I think that we're all going to be better sharpeners, network better, and better people because of what we've got going on today. Our topic for today is 5-in-1, 5-in-1 blades. We got it right up here. Our special guest today is Jason Sturm from the Edge Pro. Sean Freeze, we're hoping he can still make it. He's got some technical issues coming. And David Norcutt out of California. So I'll let them guys do their own introduction. 5-in-1 blades, in case you guys don't know, adjustable blade, kind of tricky, a lot of ways to do them, and we're going to dive into that today, hopefully. And I know I'm going to learn something because I'm surrounded by a bunch of great sharpeners that are here to share. So enough about me as far as I'm concerned. We're located in Central Illinois. We sharpen a lot of blades. We have been for almost next year will be 30 years for Sharp Edges sharpening service. I started just shortly after Dad in the fall, and really look forward to what's going on with this Sharp Talk Live going on now, and just honored to be with group of people like yourselves and like these instructors today. And one thing I always say is, with everyone, even after sharpening 30 years, some days I'm the teacher and some days I'm the student. And I know today, hopefully, that I know that I will, and hopefully all of us will be either teachers or students today and be able to share and learn from this meeting that we got going on. So I think what we're going to do is get started. I'll introduce Jason Sturm next from the Edge Pro. He'll introduce himself and show us his techniques on sharpening. I'm going to have a few questions that I'll throw in there to Jason, and I'll be able to answer myself as we go throughout the meeting. So, Jason, you're up, buddy.
All right. Well, great introduction. I appreciate all that you got started here, Dennis and Tanya and Lainey. Proud to be here with you, and hopefully we'll be able to clear up some mysteries around these blades. First of all, we've been in business just about the same length of time as Sharp Edges. We're at almost 34 years doing this. Dad was sharpening almost 7 years when I joined him toward the late 90s. And now, if any of you have met my son, Zach, he is general manager of the store and really operations manager anymore. And that's helped us a lot. My mom is still here, 83 years old, and still works every day. We try to get her to go on more and more trips, but she keeps coming back. And so, it's a good piece of what we are every day. We have a great staff right now, and they're still learning, a lot of new people over the last couple of years. And so hopefully everybody can be patient with us as they get through the learning curve of trying to figure out this business. So if you guys understand yourselves how much you have to learn still, imagine somebody that's come into this from way outside the industry and expected to be an expert for you. And so Zach and I work every day to try to educate and bring them up to speed, and in an ever evolving industry. Today, Dennis is talking about having us show techniques around the 5-in-1 blade. In a minute here, I'll probably switch my camera around so you can see down onto my work surface. One thing I'll tell you is Wall, Andis, Oster, anyone that's making these adjustable blades will tell you that they are disposable. So what we are all doing in this industry is not supposed to happen. Wall has been the most proactive in giving us extra parts available so that we can rebuild those blades. But in their view, they're still disposable. So we kind of defy what the factory says. And that's always fun. That's actually one of my favorite things is being able to do something that they don't think we can. The 5-in-1 blade is a very unique one, as Dennis mentioned. There's a few hundred things that we need to keep in mind when we're going to sharpen those. And, Dennis told me I had to keep myself fairly short and to the point. We did have a 12.5 hour session here a couple weeks ago back at the gathering. And so it is known that I can talk. So I'm sure if I get on a rabbit trail, Dennis will bring me back to the right direction. I'm going to go ahead. I think I'll go ahead and switch my camera down here. I'm going to stand up. I'll go into my other holder, and I think I have to spin this around.
Oh, beautiful.
And we're going to try to make it. I'll try not to hit the off button because that would kind of. All right. So I'm going to get us around here. It's a little small on my screen. Wish I could make myself the big screen. We'll see here. All right. But basically, I would just want to be able to see the different tools and things that I'm going to work with. We've got testing material over here. We've got some of my main tools. I got a few different examples of different blades. If you can't see something, let me know. And then we're going to go over here to the sharpening wheel. So I want to start with a couple of items. We'll look at combs first. The comb blade itself, we sharpen on our standard plate. That's a 1/2 degree taper on the plate. And we don't change based on different types of blades as far as what plate we put underneath it. We work with 180 grit in our store. We know there's a range of different grits people like to use. We've just stuck with one. It keeps our lives simple, and I'm simple, so it keeps it straightforward for us. The comb blade itself, realistically, we have our teeth. We have a zone back here ahead of the screws and between the rail and the screws where our back feet of the cutter are going to sit. And then from our screws back, really the rest of that blade surface is mounting material that we're going to use for the plastic carrier that holds the spring and makes our adjustments. And so when we're sharpening, all we really care about is from about where my thumb is, if you can see with the shadow, from my thumb to the tips of the teeth. And so that's what we're going to focus on when we go onto the sharpening machine. One thing is, whenever we sharpen a blade that's adjustable, along with trimmer blades, but most anything that's adjustable, notice we don't have any extension of the tooth down to the skin. We're just relying on the wedge shape to change our length of cut. And when we come out and sharpen, a lot of times what's going to happen is we're going to create a scratch point first at the back side of the tooth, and then eventually we can create needles out of these so where it's going to catch skin. We don't want that, right? Because that's going to damage and create wounds. And so we always have to be able to treat that tooth and soften it back to a ballpoint pen. That way we create that safety zone. There's different ways to approach that, from a piece of abrasive that's down on the table, something like this diamond stone. I've got a flat hone over here to the side that I do the work on, and mostly because, well, when I have one, and then secondly, because I don't have enough time in the day to soften teeth any other way. If you guys know the history of Nebraska blades, Bob Chisel used to put a little fishhook sharpener, a little pink stone, in to soften these teeth. Well, if you've ever used one of those, it is a great tool to maintain from day one. First time it's sharpened all the way through its life. But if you ever fall behind, it's awfully fine, and it's not going to help us get there quickly. So I didn't want to forget about the teeth, because we get a lot of times is we'll do all the right sharpening, and when we go into our test medium or to the client, we've created a dangerous situation, or it's going to catch in the coat and the cut will fail. So that's a simple little piece of the design that we have to remember. I'm going to set that one down. Another thing that we talked about a little bit through the week here before we got here were these diamond blades. Here's one that came off of a clipper. It's been used. Maybe you can see in the light a little bit of the wear track from the cutter moving on it. But realistically, a lot of these are undamaged. That coating is very hard. And a lot of times we can either just freshen up the cutter, replace the cutter, put them back together, and off we go. In our shop, for the most part, when they're coming in, they're typically pretty worn. And we actually go and run these on 80 grit to pull the coating off so that we can resharpen the blade more efficiently. Next time it comes in, we won't have to do that rough cut, but we'll run it on 80 grit to pull the coating off. Then we go back to 180 to finish it. With that, we do want to probably run a wire brush back down through the teeth to make sure we didn't create any burrs up in there, because we are removing quite a bit of material. Typically on a cone blade here, we wouldn't really worry about the burring. It's going to flake off and be a pretty natural edge. But that's kind of how we approach those diamond combs. It's going to see here. Okay, here's my good comb. The one I first pulled up here actually does have quite a scratchy edge, and I would want to soften that. And if you look, I don't know again how well you can see in the camera, but there's not much rail left there. I can just barely catch my nail here. So we would be calling this one pretty well worn out. One more sharpening or so, and then we would really have to take it out of service. This blade, though, is in fairly new condition. We got a pretty strong rail here to work with. And the first thing we would want to do is take it over to the machine and sharpen. So technique-wise, what we're going to approach when we come over to our sharpening plate is a position where I put my magnet so that when I'm using a horseshoe magnet on here, I'm going to put my finger pressure. So if you look at a straight line through the blade, I'm pushing down right over the front rail. I'm keeping my pressure concentrated there, mostly because the centrifugal force and inertia of the plate is pulling that abrasive, and it's naturally trying to tow under the blade. So when we get our front pressure, we don't have the front rail skipping on the abrasive instead of getting a good impact into that surface. So I'm going to turn the machine on, and what I'm going to do for a line within the crown of the plate, I don't know if you can see my laser line there real well, but I've advanced that ahead of center line. So center line is here, and on a parallel line, I move that forward so that I can actually advance my teeth up to that line and center the two rails, or the width of the cutter, over the top crown of the plate. That gives me the most balanced, uniform hollow grind that I can get. Now, at the same time, I just mentioned hollow grind, but this is an adjustable cutter. Anytime we have, a comb, and anytime we have a comb that we want multiple positions for the cutter, we're going to attempt to create a flatter grind than we would on a standard comb. The reason for that is when, our purpose of the hollow grind is to allow us to seat perfectly from the tips of the cut back into the throat of that cutting edge. And so seating means that the two match and marry to each other. And if we have a perfectly seated blade, they will end up flat to each other, both comb and cutter. And so what I'm going to do, if I were typically going to hold this and run across the plate, and again, I'll get myself turned so I can get my normal grip, I would be running this back and forth. I'm going to make about 2 passes on a Nebraska machine at 1700 RPM or 1750. And then I'm going to do an inspection of the surface to make sure I've gotten rid of any wear. So that's my process. I would typically be putting about 1.5 pounds of down pressure. So if I go to my scale and I get my Hot Wheel car out, I would have about 1.5 to 1.7 pounds of pressure. Being as I want a flatter grind, what I'm going to do is make those passes, those 2 passes, then on the last pass back out to the outer edge, where it's the flattest of my hollow, or that crown, I'm going to lighten my pressure to about 1 pound. So what you're going to see are bigger sparks, and then that last little bit before I pull it up, they're going to die back. So we're going to make those passes. So I'm going to start in the middle. There's my first half. 1, 2. And did you see the sparks die back? Again, everybody's on mute, so I don't expect an answer. I'm going to flash that in the light. All my wear and damage is gone, and I am done with that blade. Now, how do I know if I created a flat enough grind? We'll swing back here just a little bit. I've got my rub plate. I'm going to go ahead and make a rub on this. Now, this plate is cleaned so that we can see our shine real easy. What I'm going to hope for is that right now, and again, it's hard to catch this in the camera, but I will try. But I'm going to see that my line is a little bit bellied down in the middle. That shows me I lighten that pressure and I'm feathering the blade. In the middle, it's about a third of the way down the teeth already, just in those 10 passes. If I do a few more passes, we're going to quickly show, yeah, in the center of the teeth, now we're halfway down the tooth already, and we're about a third in the corners. So we are seating down the teeth very quick into a flat position. So that's going to give us good cuts at the tips, middle, and back of the cutter tooth as we advance and pull it back. So that is our technique that we use so that we don't have to change plates or change technique other than the pressure we put over the blade. Again, when we do question and answers, if you got any questions on that, we'll cover it. I would now set my comb aside as done. Now I have to approach the cutter. And what I'm going to do is I'm first going to show you a cutter here. And again, I wish I could see it better in the light. Dennis, maybe you or David, can you see where this blade actually has the rail, the front rail gone? If you can see that in the light or not. And so that's just showing, okay, that's a cutter that's going to give us trouble, right? It's already got the rail gone. We're into the meat of the teeth, and it was really sharpened irregularly. So we're dead over here, but we still have rail on this side. We're probably going to replace this one. So I just wanted to show that as one that I would probably even call one that I wouldn't resharpen because, again, it's going to give me too many problems. I can pick one up where we have good amount of rail in the front. We still have good feet in the back, and that's ready to then go onto the plate. So if I go over to my plate, the issue with the cutters that people have run into, or what the design is, that this is a stamped blade rather than a machined blade. So when they come in with the band of steel, it's going through a forge and it's stamping out those parts. A couple things, we all know that there's this big hole right in the middle. So there's very little strength in the middle of the blade. So it does not take much of any heat for the blade to warp. And so as we heat this up on the plate, if we do too many strokes, the corners droop, do extra grinding on the corners. And then when it cools, the corners lift. Now we have only the center that's making contact, and that is kind of our most common issue, is the corners won't cut for us. So one of the things we do is we stay on the plate very minimal amount of time. I could, on my 201 model, slow it down, and I could go about half speed, but I don't find that necessary. And again, I remember I don't have a lot of extra time, so I want to keep things moving. So I'm just going to do a short amount of time on the plate itself. I'm going to go right about the middle of the plate. So again, this is a way where we use different dimensions of our hollow for different purposes. The center of this plate has a taller crown way in here to the center compared to the outside edge. So it's a taller hill. If I'm about in the middle, it's, again, the mid-range of my tallest to smallest. And as I work in here, under light pressure, instead of feathering it like I did on the comb, that means I moved over into a taller crown, I'm still going to get a hollow grind. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll make impact. I have to be very careful not to crash on the front teeth because we don't have much metal at all. I am not going to make strokes. I'm going to make very short movements. And the purpose of that is not to create and generate heat. So again, I'm going to pass that in the light. I'm going to inspect it for discoloration, damaged tips, or shadowing. If I don't think I see anything bad, I can go ahead. Oh, but I do. I see a couple teeth right over in here where the tips are still hazed out. So I don't have quite enough material removed from the original wear. So I'm going to go back, make a couple more kisses on the plate. I'm going to explain that again. It's the blade kissing the plate, not me. And now again, I have a nice, clean, even color on all the teeth, all the way through the tips to infinity. I don't see any damage. And I'm now going to test myself back on the rub plate. Again, because being as we don't want to assemble something that's junk, if I do this real quick, I can see if I built up too much heat and warped the blade. All right, in the light here, I don't know if you guys can pick it up. I've got a little wave in it, but more or less, every tooth is shining in the rub. I didn't like my rub, I'm going to go ahead and just check it again. One figure that I put out there that I got from engineers at both Andis and Oster is on average, takes about 1 to 2 minutes of runtime to fully seat a blade. If you think about our average clipper speed, that means about anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 strokes. And we've given it 20 strokes so far. Now we're maybe up to 30. So we know for a fact we're not fully seated yet. We just are trying to make sure we have a decent grind. And so now all my tips of all the teeth are shining in. We're getting a good look at this, but I do have a burr. And that is one difference in these stamped blades. Remember, they can't have this to be too hard and too brittle, or else we'd just snap teeth off in that stamping process. So they will hold the burr different than others. I'm going to take a wire brush here, and I'm going to stroke down through the teeth, and I'm going to be very aggressive. In our shop in the other room, we actually use a wire wheel on a bench grinder. Because see, like even right there with that much work, I did not get that burr to fully flip on this side. It's still kind of caught in the teeth. The argument could say that if I used a finer grit, maybe I would have finer burrs and this wouldn't be as hard. And so that's a potential. But again, I would have to stop and change everything in my setup, or I'd have to have a machine dedicated to it. And we just don't get enough. Like in our shop, we may sharpen 50 to 100 of these a week. And to me, that's not quite enough to dedicate a machine to it. All right, I'm going to lay this on a diamond plate. I've got the burr hanging down. I'm not going to put weight over this. I'm just going to lay enough pressure with my fingers that I can drag it. And what I'm doing is I'm using the grit, and this is a 1200 diamond stone that's worn out. It saw a year of service in the shop doing ceramic cutters, and now it's there just to do this job. And so I'm just going to lay my fingers, barely pull back 3-4 inches, and then I'm going to feel for that burr removal. If I feel like there's still burr, I can flip it one more time, drop it down, and a quick light drag. So all I'm doing is trying to use the abrasive to pull the little fragments of burr away. From there, we're going to allow it to seat. I'm not trying to put pressure down here to change my hollow grind. That would kind of defeat the whole idea, right? And so otherwise, why wouldn't I just start here? And there is a way, to do those by hand. Some do. I just found that, again, when you're doing a volume, using the machine is a lot faster and gets us there well, but we just have some of these anomalies we have to watch for. Once we get that deburred, we're really ready to reassemble this and put it back in. Everybody that's done these have seen the base assembly, or I know there's a good word for that because we sell them, but the plastic part with the spring and the adjustable plastic.
The platform.
Platform, there you go. Remember, they just keep me in an office anymore, so I don't really remember everything. But that platform and how the springs go in, they're towed out right now. And so you can't just pull them off, right? So all I do is I slide it over. But when I do, it straightens the spring and it comes out of the hole and they're off. So it's very easy. I see people fight with this all the time. But if I just pull it over, again, that towed out bend of this wire comes up straight in the hole. And if you're just barely lifting up, not really forcing, but just lifting up slightly, it's that easy, it'll fall out. The platform, we want to make sure that these 3 legs on the bottom that attach it to the clipper are there. Or again, it would waste our time putting that back together to find out that it won't stay on the clipper. That's a good time to replace a platform. Not a lot else we do to this unless we find after assembly that something's been bent. That is a good thing to look at before you take it apart. Double check that the alignment of the cutter and the comb are good to each other. So that is the platform. We have our blade yoke. So this plastic piece here, this one shows some classic damage. There's 2 little feet in the back, along with a third that hold it into the hole in the middle, along with clipping over the back. And this one in particular, the 2 back feet are broken off. So when we go to put that on, there's nothing to keep it there. Okay. And so if I had that condition, I can go ahead and mount it back onto the platform, and it will sandwich back together with the comb. we prefer to replace them if we can. And so, again, they will work with them broken. So if you ran out of the yokes, you wouldn't be dead in the water, but it would still function for you.
I will say that I've had a couple of those little back hooks broken, and I have glued them because I mean it's not what I want to do, but
a way to get it around it when you have to. Yeah.
Whenever COVID happens and there's nothing available.
That's right. Sometimes that is what we're up against is a shortage or a supply chain. That's our new keyword, isn't it? When I go to put this back on, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it kind of centered between everything. I'm going to push down on the comb and push forward so that I slide into those pieces. Now, I'm used to doing it the other direction. So I'm going to flip it back over. I'll push down and get it to move up into place. Once I do, I'm going to make sure that the two outside little dimples fall into the holes. When I go to remove that, when they're not broken, I just lift up on a corner. It'll slide back, come off without breaking anything. So it's really a simple procedure. We are bringing in a generic version of this. I was just going to look at that. I had a note. So here. I'm not sure what the factory original cam followers are. These are wholesale 35 cents. We do sell them at $1 for retail. It kind of matches up with the wall originals. And we do get the wall originals also when we can. But there's, like Dennis saying, sometimes we just can't get the factory to ship stuff in the last couple of years. But that's that cam follower. We've got our platform, our cam follower, our cutter, our little adjustment arm for the 5 different positions. If those break, of course, they are available separately also. The thing that happened with Wall is they made these into kits. And so now we have to sell you the cam follower with the arm and the 2 screws instead of buying one of the others. That's why we sought out the generic part ourselves, to have another option so you didn't have to buy a whole kit to get one little part. When Wall did that, they didn't ask us if that was a good idea, I guess. But these are all the parts laid out into the assembly. We would go ahead and stack that back together. We're going to put our yoke back on. We're going to find one wire into the hole. And we're going to bring the other into the little V-track in the yoke, then drop it in the hole. Once it's there, it's all spring-loaded again and ready to go back on the clipper. I'll lay my arm in place. Sort of. Find the right spot here. Oh, I got it backward. That's why. See, I'm looking in the camera. That didn't work. All right. Then I would stack my comb on. And the nice thing is these are self-positioning. We don't have any adjustments to make on these. So once we pinch it down, everything should line up. Now, this is a good time to double check that my cutter actually stayed behind the comb teeth, especially if I rounded off these teeth here, that we didn't create a dangerous situation. I don't have my screws in yet, but I can pull that and make sure that I have a safe zone for everything to work and that it's sitting straight. If it's not straight, one of the things we can do is come in, get our cutter back off. Get it in the right hand here, take it off. And these 2 little 90-degree bends, sometimes they are bent opposite or different angles to each other. And so if I had one corner that was too far forward, I could take that side and bend the tab backward, and that would allow us to have a little more clearance for safety. That may not get it all the way. If you want to start making other bends in the spring, it gets to be a diminishing return quickly. And so just I have done that where I've come in here where there's a little 30-degree bend in the middle of the spring and bent that a little further into a inward so that it shortens the length of the wire. Again, trying just to barely move things enough to get me 1 safe and 2 as straight as I can. That's a way to save a blade. You could try a new platform. Maybe it is that these wires were compromised and that would solve it. But those are things, when we put it together, now we put our 2 screws back in and we're ready to test. Testing wise, we're going to move over here a little bit more and I'll move stuff into the camera as I can. I've got a blade that I actually finished earlier. I didn't want to take time to do everything, but I would take that and I usually come up and I'm going to take my oil I'm just going to put a couple drops of the teeth and catch the back rail on both sides. Then I'm going to cycle the blade a couple times just to make sure that oil gets everywhere. I don't want any dry spots. And just to make sure that when we're doing this, shut my machine off, that we don't, well, I should say, what we're trying to do is allow it to seat a little bit here while I'm moving it and cycling it. That way we can then test our cut. We can test on, or we test on 3 different mediums. So we have test string, and we're going to come in and drop that in and look for a good cut. I'm going to cut it. I usually cut in the longest position and the furthest back. And I'm going to drop in. Notice how it's failing back a little bit. That's more how I'm holding it than the string not cutting. And it's a little better. But it's not pulling. It's not dragging. Everything is cutting through well. When I come over next, you can still see this. This is pelt. And I want to be able to ensure that it rolls up cleanly, no dragging, no pulling, especially in the corners. And then we've got a good clean cut in both long and short cut. And I can also take the fake fur. And again, I want that to have a nice clean cut. Again, no matter what I'm at, I can even go down deeper into the cut and make sure I can get some of that denser fur down in the bottom. It's not quite 12 and a half hours, but that is our general procedure. So again, warping is a big problem with the cutter along with the burr. So watching your heat and then watching that we don't leave a burr behind that's going to compromise the cutter. And then obviously then on the comb, again, most important piece is to drop some of that pressure if you're using a tapered wheel and allow it to flatten or feather. And then also to soften the teeth if you've gotten a sharp tooth on the tip where it would damage skin. All right, I'm going to see. Come back around here. I think I might have covered everything in Dennis's early questions that he gave us. But if I missed something.
Beautiful, beautiful. A couple of questions, and I know that other people have this. What do you guys charge for what you just did?
Okay, right now we charge $13. So we are charging $8 for general detachable blades, but on these we charge more just because of the complications with the cutter. We do sharpen the cutters. If we replace a cutter, we charge more. We are 13 plus parts. So if they need a platform, an arm, a cam follower, or a replacement cutter, we charge that above the cost of the 13.
I got you. And my next, I agree with everything you've done so far. And I just might add a few things whenever I go just a little bit, but awesome procedure. The only other thing, let's see. You know what? I think that's it. That's all the only questions, unless anybody else has. That's the only questions I have as far as what you've done. And you know, there's a couple things that you said that really reaffirmed what I do. And it's good to know that people are doing it, or at least I was doing it like, you know, the professionals were. And my other question, which style of because we have the wall 5-in-1 blade.
Right. And
we also have the Andis 5-in-1 blade.
Yes, and the current Andis blade that's on their current design is interchangeable with wall on the clippers. But again, the parts do not interchange. And Andis is not giving any of those extra parts. So if you choose to take one apart and to sharpen it, we start with a disclaimer to the customer. Is it actually dull? Because it may be worse when we get done. And I can't replace the parts and update it for you. So make sure that it's truly dull. They're not just saying, well, it's got a lot of miles on it near here, let's go ahead and sharpen it, because I might disappoint them. So we want to just cover that ahead of time. And then we do take those apart, sharpen them just as if we were doing this. Same procedure. One thing we notice is the Andis blade doesn't seem to build a burr on the cutter. So a little more resilient that way. I have, you know, at the factory level, the machines they're using, they go through a typical kind of hollow grinding process that we're doing here, but they follow in a lapping machine. And so all those cutters are crosshatch lapped. And you kind of see that out of either the Hungary or German factory for wall. Those cutters come in a crosshatch, and they actually are seating the blade for us. That way, when it's coming in, it's already deburred, seated, and ready to be used.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And, Jason, really good demonstration of what you do with the 5-in-1 blade, your techniques and your procedure there. And I really, really appreciate what you've done there with this. Very, very well detailed explanation too on there. I'm going to add just a few little things. Anybody else have any questions for Jason right now? I'll be quiet. If you guys do, go ahead and I think Lainey or Tanya will unmute you. You guys can ask the question before I get started.
Jason.
Yes, Roger.
When you grind off the diamond, the black ceramic coating,
yes,
it's been my understanding that when we do that, we've created nothing more than a standard Arco cutter blade.
So the idea is taking off that hard coating on the inside could compromise the longevity of the comb compared to when it was new. Yep. What we look at is we still have coating on the sides of the teeth that come right down to the cutting edge. So we still have some reinforcement. But if that edge is rolled enough that we aren't getting a good cut anymore, this is our salvage, right? That or it's thrown away. And so by doing it this way, if they could only had the standard amount of sharpened surface life, let's say, as a standard blade, that's still a pretty good return compared to throwing it away and starting over. We have not actually, a lot of times with this kind of thing, we would actually do tests and mark blades, serial number them, see how long they're coming in and out and things like that. And, maybe over 100 sets, determine how much we would diminish life. We have not done that with this particular blade. We were talking about this, knowing this class was coming up. So Brian and I were kind of discussing, because he's the one that's currently sharpening those, if he felt like a customer was sending back that blade more often. But again, we haven't done a true test scientifically to know whether it really how much it's changed the life of the sharpening. But again, I usually won't do that until a blade is not cutting on its own. In other words, the cutting edge is rolled, and the only way to really bring it back is to remove the diamond or that black coating.
Agree.
Okay. And about how many times do you think we can sharpen the cutters?
With normal damage and wear, probably 3 to 4 times at the most. Again, if you noticed, I didn't make full passes. I'm taking very insignificant amount of metal off in a sharpening. If you see someone making full passes across the plate, they're taking way too much material away per sharpening and hugely increasing their chances of warping that surface, which means then you have to take more off to try to correct it. A great demonstration of this years ago, Judy Brenner had a show out in North Carolina, and Mitch Kisland with the Shop Incorporated set up a cutter on the table at a slant. Had to put a little screwdriver underneath it, put a dial indicator in the middle, and then took a lighter and just passed it that quickly, just right past it. And we watched that needle move like 10 thousandths and then move right back. And the point of that demonstration was, if you don't think you're going to warp one of these, you're fooling yourself. And so on a high-speed machine going even one full pass, you're moving that surface. And so it really compromises your ability to get a fine finish on it.
Okay. Great. The other thing I noticed, when you're putting it together, do you put a shot of grease in the blade holder so that when it sits on the file? I just want to make sure I'm doing things the right way.
Right in this slot in the cam follower. Yeah, that's a great thing. You've got a metal driver on the clipper that's moving in plastic. So a little bit of grease will make it last longer. The factory does put a tiny bit in there, sometimes not enough. So I use we use the Oster grease because that's what we have, and that works really well. Lister, Some have a good, solid high temperature grease, but that'd be the key, is it's a high temperature grease.
So it's putting it in there is tough.
Yeah.
Here's what I use.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's out of one of my veterinarian hospitals. So it's a horse or a cattle syringe, and I fill it with grease, and that's how I shoot it in there. Otherwise, I get it everywhere.
Right.
Great. I'm going to add to that right now, that because it was something I had. The yoke. If your blade comes in super dry once you take it apart, definitely check out your yoke, because you'll see a little round wear pattern inside that yoke, and that'll make your blade loud and not have full travel. I don't know if you guys can see that roundness in there. And I know Jason's got some too, but that's something to check. And same way, I use a super loop. What I use.
Oh yes.
And I actually take the lid off, and I've got a needle oiler that I took this little funnel thing off, so I can squeeze out just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Nice.
That on there. I don't know where I got that from, but it's an old style needle oiler is what it is. But anyway, we sharpeners, we make stuff, don't we?
That's right. I had one other sample here too. If any of you have seen this base, that's the Pro base from Wall. They do not allow that part to come out as a replacement. So if you get one and it's broken and you can't glue it back on like Dennis was talking, you can put the standard base onto that comb and cutter. So don't just throw the blade away, just switch it over. But that is a more solid piece of plastic that you'll see. Another thing I just wanted to quickly, because you made the comment about being noisy. There's two little hooks in here on the housing that catch the two longer legs on the sides. That's how we latch it in place. And those can get bent out of place. And so if you take and pull it away from or toward the bottom housing, kind of close the C shape just slightly. Here, I'll move it up. I don't know how well you can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Right here. And so you push that upward just slightly, and that will help you tighten the catch so that the blade latches on tighter. Just one more quick thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All righty. Well, thank you very much, Jason. And, very wealth of knowledge as usual. Very helpful. And if we have any more questions, we'll get with you at the end. I just want to add just a few little things before that I do, and then we're going to get David, because David does it totally different than we do. Whenever I take the platform off, I always look for broken pieces. That way I don't have to do it after I've reassembled it. We've all been there. Get back in a hurry and then realize one of the legs is broken. I also will add, a lot of times I'll add a little bit of spring tension. So you guys see my wires here. I'll take a screwdriver and just go under it here. It's a little bit bigger than this one. It's actually the next size bigger, just a little bit smaller than a pencil. And I just put it in here like this and just give it a little push. And I feel that adds just a little bit of tension, because we are removing metal. Not much. I'm not going overboard. Another thing that I'll check is if I think that the springs are crooked, I'll lay my pink stone there like that, and you guys can see how the wires are even this way. Just something else that I do. That's what this is about, sharing and growing together there. But those are two little things. As far as sharpening, I do the same thing. I sharpen with my laser. Let me tilt this down just a little bit. There we go. I sharpen, well, you might not be able to see it. I sharpen with my laser basically right behind that ridge, which what Jason said is the same thing when you flip it over. It's almost pretty much gonna split that front and back rail. Same thing. I like Jason's way of lining the laser up with the front teeth so you stay square. Yeah, so I do that. The only difference I do, I usually replace the cutter because I'm in a hurry, but nonetheless, I usually replace the cutter. If I have to sharpen it, the only thing that I do different myself is I will use a 500 grit diamond stone, make a few passes with the yoke on, just 5 or 8, 10 passes. I'll deburr it with my fine wire brush, like what Jason uses, deburr it. Then I'll go to my 2,000 grit stone and my 5,000 grit stone. And my last few passes are very light, the same way. It's going to create this to be flat. And I just have good luck doing it that way. But now that I've watched Jason do his already, I think I have been overdoing it on my disc. So I'm going to try it on the disc. Thank you, Jason, very much for that. But that's the way I've had really good luck. It's just doing it on the stones with my cutter. So it's something that if you're not having good luck on the disc, you could try it that way. So I did that. You covered the screws. Also, make sure you check the screws if it's loud there. You covered that. You covered what I covered as far as light pressure. I hold my fingers like that on the side of my magnet. And when you guys do that, when you check your magnet, and this is true for all blades, what you want to do is lay your blade like that. And as soon as you touch that, you'll see that a lot of times you'll see that blade just tilt forward just a little bit. And that engages that front rail really good. Especially true if you're freehanding wide blades. You definitely want more pressure up there. When that's a whole different subject on there. But Jason, thank you for confirming that the black blade is or that you don't have to sharpen all the way back here. Thank you very much for that. So that's all I got. I don't want to take up too much. We're going to have David. I do charge $13 for those, and that includes all parts as needed. That way, it includes the new cutter for myself. That way, if I put a new cutter on, I'm okay. Or if I happen to sharpen that cutter, then I'm still okay. I don't automatically just replace parts on that price. So I'm just going to stop there because I don't want to take up too much time. I want to really interested in seeing David's way of sharpening. David Norcutt from Oregon, Rogue Valley. Is that right?
Yes, I'm Dave with Rogue Valley Mobile Sharpening, and I'm out of Southern Oregon. I travel all the way to Central California, all the way up to Salem. And I started about 3 years ago just because there was a need for a good sharpener in the area. And I was like, well, it can't be that much. So what the heck? So I dove into it and spent a lot more than I thought, spent a lot more on training than I thought. But anyways, so I went with the automated machine, never having sharpened a blade before in my life. And I wanted to and I know it's real hard to get that hand feel for hand sharpening. So I just wanted to alleviate all the issues and just go automated. So it's perfect every time. Yes, it probably took me, I trained with Mitch. It took me about a month after that to really get a feel for it where I felt comfortable after doing several hundred blades to where I felt comfortable to go out in the field and do good quality work. So then, I guess, sorry, this is my first instructional video I've ever done, so bear with me a little bit here.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah, so I want to do I'm a perfectionist. Might not seem that way sometimes when I'm talking online, but anyways, I want to do the best I can. So I bought this machine. If you want to break the piggy bank, go ahead and do it to do a perfect job every time. But as all these guys show you can do just as good by hand. And thank you, Jason, for going over all the tips and tricks. So if I miss anything here, just look back on his stuff and I agree with it all 110%. But all right, well, I guess I'll jump into it and show you my techniques. And if anybody has a machine or wants to buy one, they can get a jump start that way. So yeah, and then I got to learn how to use this thing. And so work with me a little bit here. So I take them all apart like you guys do, check for sharp edges, pointy edges, see how much wears on the blade, if I need to go down to a coarser grit. So I use 240 grit and I use a standard A5 blade for the combs, just because when I'm on the road, I don't want to have to switch plates to a flatter plate, which I do have, and I've used it and get just as good results as far as I notice. And then for the cutters, I use a CBN wheel that Mitch makes. It's like a 3000 taper, whatever you want to call it. So it's half as much hollow as an A5 plate. And I was just replacing them and getting really good results with that. I'm doing this on the A5 plate. And then I have these on the A5 plate, and maybe 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, I would have to take apart and redo. So I started charging a bit more because it took me a lot more time to figure these out. So I'm at $15 a blade because I was replacing these, and it's taken me a long time to do them. So that's why I was at that price, and I just kind of stuck to that price. And then, so now I've sharpened several hundred of these. So I kept all the old cutters, and now I go through, put my CBN plate on there, and then sharpen 150 to 100 at a time. So then I can just store them like this in a little pouch when I need to use them. And then I just take out however many I need at each stop. And then they're already sharpened, deburred, demagged, and all that. So then I just got to clean them I use a simple green and water solution brush and clean them, blow them off with high pressure air. So yeah, that explains that. So I'll go to the machine and show you guys how I set that up, and see if I can figure out this tripod thing here. So you got your automated shop machine. Let's see if you guys can see that. And then this is the standard A5 for the combs. And I just leave it on the standard setting for the combs. And then let me see if I can raise this and show you guys how I figure out the center line. So I have a comb here, and I just try to get the center line about where that black mark is right there. So to do that, I just hold it on the center of the shaft there, and it's about 1/4 to 3/8 away from this little, it'd be like a laser line, but less technologically advanced. So then I figure out it's about, let's say, 1/4 inch. So then I set my comb on the attachment, make sure it's all straight and centered. And I already know where I'm supposed to pull this out to. So standard A5 setting is right at that black line on the shaft there. And then, so I pull it out to, there's like a second black line on the back. And then I'll just drop it down to make sure I'm 1/4 inch away from that laser line. And then I'll just show you real quick how I started up. And I run about 1,300 RPMs on the comb. And I'll do a full cycle, which is like 5 passes, but we'll just do a couple passes for now, just speed it up. And it'll lift, and I'll kiss the plate a couple times just in case there's any heat and warpage. I'll just kiss it. And then I'll take it, and you can see my brush mount on the side here, and I'll kind of hold it at an angle and brush it. And I'm doing like 1/4 of it or 1/3 of it at a time. And I'll rotate it the other way, and I'll pull it through to brush the burr. And then I'll come back, set it, center it, make sure it's all. So I kind of eyeball this line here with the back of the bracket and make sure it's not angled at all. And then I'll just kiss the plate really quick to flatten and cut that burr the rest of the way. Just a real quick kiss. And then demag it, wash it. So that's the comb, how I do that. And then the cutters, I check to see if it's real. Sorry, what? Oh. So the cutters, I'll just check for damage, how bad they are, if I should replace them or whatever. And then here's the cutter attachment for, oops. and it's all set up and ready. And I'll show you guys really quick how I find center line on that. Gotta wait for it to slow down. All right, so I'll take a cutter when I first got this attachment to set it up at the right setting, and I'll set a cutter right in the middle just to measure. So I'll measure from the back of the cutter there to that line, and then I put a cutter in the attachment. And this attachment, it could wobble in there. There's 2 magnets, one in the back, one in the front, and you want to make sure it's touching the magnet in the back. And then shut that off so it doesn't slide. And then I'll set it down and I'll measure from this line to that cutter to make sure it was the same as that to get it in the center. And then this thing's in the way, so I got to pull it out. And then I'll just do a full cycle. Can you still see there? And then I run so another thing is I use CBN to sharpen these, and it's $725 through Mitch. And it's half as much hollow as a regular A5 plate. And I figure that's about 162 cutters at $450 a cutter. So if I can sharpen 162 cutters, it pays for itself. And you should be able to get 800 cutters out of a CBN wheel. And you can have another taper on the back side of the plate if you want a flat for the combs, whatever. And then so I'll do the 800 RPMs and just pretend this is CBN. It's a pretty orange wheel. And then it's a 25 micron, which is like 800 grit, just for the sharpest edge possible you can get on it, I guess. And it's just easier to remove the burr. You don't have to use much pressure with the brush, as I was told. And so just pretend this is a CBN wheel, less taper. I'll run a full pass. And we'll just shorten up the cycle real quick. A full cycle will go back about 5 times. So then I'll pull it off. Or no, sorry, I won't pull it off. After it does a full cycle, I'll kiss it a couple times because it probably warped a little bit. I'll just kiss it that few times. Like Jason said, don't actually kiss the plate. It'll hurt a little bit. And then I'll do it on my rub plate. So I just go on my rub plate, few passes back and forth, and I'll check. And I don't do this every time. I can see it comes down halfway on the edges and up a little bit of crescent there, all the way across. It looks beautiful. I'm sure it's impossible to see on there, but that's a beautiful rub pattern. So then I'll brush it with let me see if I can find my brass brush here. So I usually lay it on the edge of a table and brush it. And you want to make sure you get the burr on the outside of the teeth here, as I was told, and then just brush it like that. And I go all the way across, brush it back the other way, and you don't have to use much pressure with the 800 grit CBN, as I was told. And it's worked really well for me. So then now the burr's brushed down. I'll put it back on here, and I'll make sure it's pushed down the back. If it's in the front, you're going to destroy your cutter. So push it down in the back. The magnet will hold it there. And I just kiss the plate really quick to remove the burr and finish it a little more. And then the cutter is done. I'll demag it, wash it, and then go to assemble everything. And then eventually I'm going to buy a second one of those cutter attachments, and I'll be able to do 2 at a time to hopefully speed up the process when I do 100 at a time. Oh. So I can put it on where the comb usually goes. So I'll have to measure however that is again and set that one up, and that'll speed up the process there a little bit, I think. And then when I go to assemble all this, it'll kind of be laid out this. Usually it's not this organized. It's all scattered. All the screws are in a pile. But yeah, so I'll wash them, all that. Just go ahead and put it together real quick. And then this.
Never mix match the black screws or the silver screws, you'll get yelled at.
Yeah. And then don't forget to put this in. There's been times where I forgot to put them in and you got to take it all the way apart. So yeah, just put it back together. And then I got one already sharpened here for testing. I was just doing the synthetic fur and it was working great for me. And then I switched to the string because it really tells you on the outer, the very last tooth right here is where your main issues are going to be if you didn't sharpen them or your cutter got warped or whatever, didn't get the burr. So I always just check those. And they cut great. Sorry, a little shaky here. And then you can always check the center, but more than likely that's going to be great if you remove the burr. And you can do the long setting. Check that. And it's hard. It always pulls up, like Jason said, but it's cutting great. And then you can always double check. This is how I was doing it before, but that is a definite going to tell you if it cuts really well or not. And then my battery's dying or something here, but I like to go through fast and make sure it doesn't bind up. And then I'll go to the middle setting from the long setting. And then let me change batteries. This thing's dying. But it wasn't even pulling when it was running real slow. There we go. That sounds better. So yeah, I just like going through fast. And then here's the lowest setting. And I just go through fast. And I'm sure going slow tells you just as good. I don't really know. I just like going fast to load it down and make sure it doesn't clog. But other than that, oh, I do have one here where it's got a bent tooth, but I still tried sharpening it, and it does catch it cuts the test fur fine. But the string, if it was lost, get another little piece of string here, and I'll show you how it does catch on the edge. So this one, you can see there's a bent tooth on this side, and it does catch a little bit there. So you can hear it, you can feel it. You might not be able to see it very much, but it does. And that's the lowest setting. It's just fraying that and not cutting very straight. You can see all the frays. And then you go to the other side, and it cuts amazing. So yeah, that's what I've noticed and how I've figured out how to do it as perfect as I can. Like I said, just replacing the cutters works really well, but I wanted to basically wanted all the quality control on my side just in case something was wrong. Then I know I'm doing something wrong and I have to figure it out from there. But that's my method. And I don't think I missed anything there. Jason went over all the other stuff on all the little things that you need to know, as well as Dennis. So if you guys have any questions or want to know anything about the machine, please feel free to ask. Dennis, did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, man, that was amazing. And I really admire your attention to detail and your eagerness to do a good job. Only going 3 years, and you guys, I've seen you come in these past 3 years, and I can definitely tell your ambition to get out there and do a good job and learn. And it really changed the way I've looked at some of these cutter blades that you're doing. I like the fact that the 800 grit on the CBN, that seemed really. I was really surprised that it was that high on that.
Yeah, but it was hard to bite the bullet and spend. I think I spent $1,000 on the plate because I had the flat for doing the combs, the 5-in-1 combs, which I didn't like switching over to it, especially when I'm on the road. We only get 4 or 5 at a stop, and then so I just tried it up. I found my spot on the A5 plate that works really well, and that's what's worked best.
Yeah. One question I did have for you on your comb, you said you sharpen with the center line on the backside about like right there where Jason and I agree. Is that just slightly behind that ridge that's
so
on there?
Here's that black line that I found works best for me. And then
Okay.
see, it forward. So it's slightly back about, I'd say almost eighth of an inch behind that ridge.
Yep, that's where I go too. Perfect.
Okay. So that's
Yeah,
good to
yeah.
know. I'm doing the same as everyone else. And I went over this with Mitch, and he's like, why don't you move the nodules on the A5 attachment? And then I showed him where I placed it on the wheel. He's like, yep, that's perfect.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
Mitch likes getting a grind all the way to the back of here, and no rhyme or reason. He just thinks it's better for the platform to sit on there flatter, but I don't necessarily think so. I think like Jason and everyone else, you get a grind to just before the holes back here, and that's good enough.
Yeah, I agree. Just where the back rail of the cutter would be, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
David?
Perfect. Yeah. Man, nobody's challenging us. We're all agreeing here, aren't we?
Hey, David,
Yeah.
you're using a CBN plate from Mitch. So am I.
Okay. Just for the
During
cutter,
COVID
correct?
is when I bought my second machine just to do the cutters.
Yeah.
I put 1,008 blades on it, send it back. Mitch sent it back to me, said it doesn't need to be surfaced yet.
That's
The
impressive.
second time I sent it back, I had over 2,000 cutters on that wheel.
Okay.
So that machine's amazing. Or that plate, you can get a lot on there.
Yeah, I hear over time it's a little harder, or sorry, over time, like 500 blades or whatever, it'll start cutting less, and then just takes longer time to remove material from the cutter is what I understood. But so when you're at 1,000 to 2,000, are you having to do 2 cycles?
When I go over 2,000, that's when I notice it, and that's what tells me put the other because I have 2 plates now. We do enough of them.
Yeah, nice.
And so the other difference that I do is we sharpen no less than 200 cutters or blades at a time. Because
Yep.
like you said, it doesn't pay me to shut machines down. I have 2 machines now, one for A5s and one just for Arcos. And the
Sweet.
Arco one is just for the cutters.
Okay, nice.
That's all we do on that one. But we do a lot of cutters for other guys now. I just had a gentleman send me, you're going to love this. No idea how many are in here. It's a 5-pound bag.
Wow.
Sharpen them and send them back at your convenience.
There you
No,
go.
that's impressive. And then what do you charge just for one cutter?
$3, but they got to buy 100 at a time. You send me your cutter, I sharpen them and send them back.
There you go. That's
So
awesome.
I have a question. I have a question. How do you guys know which cutters not to sharpen?
When they don't pass my test, because after I run so many, I pull so many out of the service and bench test them. Actually put blades together. And if I start having issues or stuff, and we guarantee everything, but you after a while you do learn that when you look at, so just like you, David, I stack them in packs of 25. When they're together, it's the wrong time to look at them. But before you bundle them up, if you let the light hit here where the cutter edge is, all right, you can actually look at that in a bright light, and you'll see flat spots that you didn't catch before, even when I'm wearing my reading glasses. I
agree with that.
I just pull those out and I'll redo them or throw them out.
Yeah, gotcha. Nice.
And the other thing is, I don't know if you can see it here on these. I engrave every time they've been sharpened. So like that's why I had asked Jason. 3/4 engrave marks there. That blade shot.
Gotcha.
So for that reason too, these are a very time-consuming blade. Yep. I'm like you. I charge $15 because I just feel when you look at new blades are $30 or more.
Yeah.
We're only charging them half, and if they can sharpen them 3 to 4 times, that's how I sell it. Look how much I saved you over 3-4 sharpenings versus buying brand new blades.
Yeah, very nice.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah.
Now the other thing is I've noticed both of you though, when you're assembling your blades and Dennis, if you remember when we were at the gathering, I showed you this little piece that I came up with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My fingers after a while get a little tough putting 200 blades together.
Oh yeah.
So it has little marks in it. They fit right in there. So it fits flat. So so I can assemble 3 at a time. Just
Very
makes
nice.
it easier for me.
That's awesome. That's cool. That's very cool.
Yep. Anybody else have any questions at all?
Yeah, I do, but you can't hear me.
I hear you.
Okay. My question is, with that CBN plate from Mitch, would anybody be comfortable in doing that freehand, or you're dependent on the shop machine?
I'm dependent on the strop machine. I've maybe sharpened 5 blades by hand in my life. So yeah.
How about Roger? Or whoever else is speaking.
Same thing. All I use is Mitch's machines anymore. I just like set it and forget it.
Right on.
You know, once you set the machine up, your first, unless something's wrong, your first blade is going to come off just like your 100th blade or your 1000th blade.
Right.
Nice.
Now I don't sharpen mobile, so I know that's a different caveat for guys that sharpen mobile. This is a quality piece of machinery that needs to be sometimes calibrated if it's being bounced around.
Right. Right.
In the back of your truck.
What's your thoughts of putting that plate on, say, a Nebraska Blades or a James Hammond's machine?
I wouldn't see why it wouldn't work. It's all about making sure you're center lined.
Right.
And then, Ward, if we ever meet up, I'll put the CBN wheel on. You can try it by hand, see how you like it.
Okay. Why I ask about this, because I know one of those plates went to Florida about a year ago or so, and the guy was going to mention about how things worked out. Well, shit, he never got back, so I don't know. I should give him a call, but like I think he paid $800 for the damn thing.
Yeah,
but that was a while back.
Yeah, but if you're like David, if you're sharpening a lot of blades, it could definitely pay for itself.
But at the same time, Jason's doing on the Nebraska Blades, and he's getting good results. That's a howdy doody in itself.
Exactly. So a lot of good ways of doing 5-in-1 blades. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to reach out to. We can talk right now, but time's getting long. Feel free to reach out to David or myself or Jason, and some more detailed questions that you have. And I definitely hope that this session has helped people on 5-in-1 blades. I know it's helped me quite a bit already.
I'd like to thank you for doing what you did here, Dennis.
Oh yeah, it's my honor to be with you guys. I have a lot of mentors in this industry, and you're one of them as well, Ward. And
Jason's always a pleasure to listen to Jason talk, and then you got old David from California. No.
Yeah, he's
I got to meet David there at the Roundup, which was cool, and of course you and Jim was there.
Yep, exactly. So you guys stay tuned to this. Lainey, this is recorded. Lainey is going to have it on Spotify in a few days. She'll edit it out, and take away all the bad language and stuff like that.
Darn it.
We'll probably leave the part about David and Jason kissing the plate. We'll leave that in there for sure. We want to see that. But everyone, thanks for attending this. And next week, I'm not sure if it's Thursday or Wednesday, but anyway, you guys stay. I'll make some posts. We're gonna be talking with Eric Wonder with the National Shield Sharpeners Guild and see what's going on in there. It's another way to expand our knowledge. And really looking forward to that. Jason, do you have any words before we need to leave?
I thank everybody for coming, and it's fun to have this. Again, another time to get a talk. So hopefully, things that we shared today will be beneficial and helpful from David too did a great job. I really appreciated that insight. And, we just look forward to maybe in the future getting a chance to do it again. Otherwise, we'll see at shows, and know that, you guys can all call us at any time, email us. I don't know. We do have a YouTube channel. There is a video on our channel specifically on this subject. And there might be a couple of them, but there is one specific 5-in-1. So again, if any of this helps you, or you're confused still, give us a call, send us a note, send us pictures. We'll analyze what we can. If you got a blade that you sharpened and it just did not work out for you and you cannot figure out why, we're very happy to look at that and see where the problem is. And we will, again, take pictures and send it back to you. Or, if you want to fix it yourself, we'll tell you what we found and how to help get it right. So
Great.
That's very great. Ethan.
Yep. Okay, guys. Yep. Thank you guys much, everyone, for coming for Sharp Talk Live. If you like it, tell your friends about it. And we look forward to seeing you guys in future episodes coming up. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you,
Next
everyone.
week, October 4th. Next week, October 4th with Eric and the NSG. Next Wednesday.
Thank you, Lainey. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Have
for
a good day.
doing this. Appreciate it.